Hi, I'm Kat, and today I have for you, like the usual, a true crime case. I will also be doing my makeup at the same time, and I also have a word in Romanian for you. So, the word for today is fals. 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 Well done, guys, you just said fake. Please ignore my eyebrows. I think I've spent like half an hour trying to do them and I don't know what happened. But anyway, let's just move on. A smart and sweet little 10-year-old boy was sadly killed at the hand of his father, a figure in a child's life that should be a role model and relied on for support and trusted for safety. But for Nakota, this didn't happen. He met his end at the hands of his own father. Was there any remorse? Let's try and find out. Oh, I'm dead. Don't expect me to come home. My dad is going to kill me. The 10-year-old boy told his mother days before he was to spend the weekend at his father's apartment in Indianapolis, just days before Anthony Dibaya killed him. Haley was a young single mother when a man messaged her through a dating app. In December 2008, they had their first date. Haley had just turned 22 and her daughter Jasmine was only 2 years old. She described the man she met as caring, thoughtful and charming. He wasn't wealthy, but they would rent movies and they just enjoyed spending time together. So Haley fell in love. At the time, she really believed that Miguel Nashama loved her as well. She would later learn that everything, including his name, was a lie. Miguel was just one of 5 different names used by Anthony Dibaya. He had been living and working in the US under a stolen identity. Haley now knows that he was just manipulating her, but she couldn't see it at the time. For 8 years, starting in 2002, Anthony was lying to Haley and everybody else. Haley and Anthony had been dating for 2 years when Haley gave birth to Nakota. In Nakota, Anthony Dibaya finally had an American son, which tied him to the United States, even after all of his lies came crashing down. Anthony Dibaya was born in Nigeria in 1983. His birth name is actually Ejike Ibe, according to federal court records. He attended Christ the King Secondary School in Obike, Nigeria, where he took his Christian name of Anthony Dibaya. He came to America in 2002 when he was only 19 years old. He lived for a few months in North Carolina with the family of a Nigerian immigrant called Jude Mibanuzu. Federal authorities say that Anthony stole the social security number and other identification records of Jude's son, Judson, who was 17 years old at the time and a Texas-born American citizen. Anthony used Judson's name to get student loans to attend the Salter School in Massachusetts in 2006. Later, in 2019, the Massachusetts Attorney General shut down all campuses connected to the school's parent company, Premier Education Group, for defrauding students. Anthony left Massachusetts in 2009. He moved to Indiana, where he used Judson's name to lease a car, to work and rent an apartment in Muncie. The real Judson finally figured out what happened and he met with FBI agents in Indianapolis in August 2011. So Anthony was arrested on August 31st, 2011. Court records say that Anthony used at least 5 names from 2002 to 2011 when he lived and worked in the US under a false identity. Facing several felony charges, Anthony had to tell Haley that he had been lying to her, but he insisted that he wanted them to stay together. So he pled guilty in May 2012 to social security fraud, identity theft and misusing documents to enter the US. Nakota was 2 years old when Anthony went to prison to serve a 34-month sentence. It would be about 5 years before father and son would see each other again. In a handwritten letter to the U.S. District Court Judge William T. Lawrence, Anthony wrote that he was very sorry for his actions, hoping that his kids won't grow up without a father because of the mistakes that he did. He also begged Haley for forgiveness in a letter dated February the 4th, 2014. Quote, "Whatever pain I have inflicted upon you, I ask you to forgive me. My goal is to make amends and be a Christian-loving family." End of quote. Immigration and customs enforcement officials tried to deport Anthony Daibia, but a spokesperson for his home country said that Nigeria refused to take him back. It's not clear why Nigeria refused to issue travel documents for him. Anthony wrote more than a dozen letters to Haley while he was a federal prisoner. In the letters, he promised to be a good father and help raise Nakota and her daughter Jasmine. But Haley feels that he wasn't being genuine, that he only said those things so she would keep in contact with him. In one letter to Haley, Anthony said that the government's difficulty in finding a country to accept him was actually a good sign. He wrote that he's fighting tooth and nail to stay, and not just because he wants to stay, but for the sake of their kids. But Haley was not interested in building anything with him. Anthony, though, he didn't give up. He was released from federal custody and he returned to Indiana in 2016. He went to court that same year and the Wabash County judge granted him joint custody and visitation time with his son Nakota. Haley said that their relationship had been broken beyond repair, but Anthony always wanted more from her. In December 2017, Haley, Nakota's mother, posted on Facebook that she hated there was no one out there to help kids anymore. For several years, Haley Kelly, who had full custody of Nakota, was trying to prevent 37 years old Anthony Daibia, his dad, from having court-ordered visitation with their 10-year-old son. There was one point when she refused to let Nakota go with his dad. However, later the police arrived and forced her to allow Nakota to go. In June 2018, Haley made another Facebook post saying how she was stressing about what happened when she picked Nakota up from Anthony. He spat in her face, threatening to beat her ass if she told him not to hit his son again. Haley also went on mentioning that the Child Protective Services didn't do anything on a previous occasion when Nakota's dad overdosed him, or on another occasion when he pulled Nakota down the staircase and left bruises on his hand. Haley couldn't find a way to stop the visits, even after she told the judge that she doesn't feel safe with Anthony. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how the system works. You tell the right people about your genuine fears and nothing is done. You expect safety and protection, but you are dismissed. The signs were there. When was this? In 2018. The signs were there, people. And yet, a life was lost, easily prevented if only someone would have listened to Haley. In late August 2018, Haley posts yet again on Facebook. This time, Anthony hit Nakota and she didn't know what to do or where to go, who to ask for help. In January 2019, she posted an image that read, "I would give my last breath so my child could have another." Haley is the kind of mom who would, bake birthday cake for her kids every year, who spends hours learning new ways to style their hair, who pays attention to every little detail. Her Facebook is filled with photos of her children. Nakota, who lived in Wabash, Indiana with his mom and a 13-year-old half-sister, made an alarming statement to his mom. After he found out that he would spend the weekend with his dad, he was just terrified. He knew that his father won't forget Nakota hanging up the phone on him because he just didn't want to talk to him. On July the 14th, Haley contacted Child Services after being informed that Nakota will spend the weekend at his dad's place in Indianapolis. Nakota's reply was, "Oh, I'm dead, don't expect me to come home." Now, I know that usually, when you hear a kid say that, you don't really think much of it, right? I mean, kids say these kind of things all the time, but Nakota was so right. It's like he predicted what would happen, and he did. Nakota told his mother he's going to kill me. Now, before you put all the blame on Haley, the mom, please stop. Just, stop. We already know that the mom tried before to stop Nakota from visiting his dad, and the police forced him to go anyway. It wouldn't have been any different even this time. I know that, it's easy to place the blame on someone after what happened, and also without actually being in this situation. Usually kids say, "Oh, my mom or dad will kill me because I did this or I did that wrong." But we all know they don't literally mean it. Who could have known that this will happen? But I have to say that I feel really sorry for Haley, because all of these years she tried to do everything to prevent and stop these visits. But the system just failed her. The system failed Nakota. Just like the system failed so many other innocent kids who died at the hands of their parents or relatives. A well-known example is Gabriel Fernandez, the 8-year-old boy killed by his mom and boyfriend in 2013. The social services in his case were called so many times, even by his teacher, and nothing happened. He was allowed by the system to die. The same system which is supposed to protect children from abuse, but it did not. Nakota had hung up the phone on his father, and Nakota knew that he would still be angry about that the weekend during Nakota's visit, and he told his mother. Haley reported this to the Department of Child Services caseworkers on July 14, 2020. The caseworker would later tell a homicide detective about the report, but nothing happened to stop the visit before the weekend. But Anthony also had another reason to be angry. Haley allowed their son to play baseball, which meant that his visit with his father would start a few hours later than scheduled. Haley told Anthony that he's more than welcome to attend Nakota's game, but he didn't want to, or he couldn't make the 2-hour drive from Indianapolis to Wabash. Anthony told her that he wanted Nakota at the time set by the judge. He threatened to call the police and take her to court. He wrote the following message on July 17, 2020 at 10:01 a.m. "If I don't get my son today, I will take necessary action, including involving the police." Haley texted back, telling him that she and Nakota would meet him at 9:30 p.m. at their usual drop-off spot in Kokomo, about halfway between both of their apartments. "Court order is 6 p.m., Anthony said in a text to Haley sent at 11:06 a.m. "If I don't see my son at 6 p.m., I will call the police and my lawyer will file citation against you." In the past, Haley had said that she gave in to Anthony's demands, but this time she actually stood up to him, believing it was best for Nakota because baseball was really important to him. She wanted him to play, even though they both knew that Anthony would be angry. There were so many other times that Nakota actually missed baseball because he had to go and see his dad, and Nakota really wanted to go to the game this time because he didn't want to let his teammates down as they had a match. So Haley said that this time, they can make the game and Anthony will just have to deal with it. Anthony was actually known to take his anger out on his son. He would yell, hit, he would make Nakota stand in a corner. But in the past, Child Department Services caseworkers found that Anthony never left a serious bruise or mark on Nakota. They never found enough evidence to substantiate abuse. So, on that Friday, Haley pulled into Kokomo at around 9:15 p.m. and handed her son over to his father. She said that there was no sign how angry Anthony became. There was no sign that this would be the last time she would see Nakota alive. But there is more to this whole situation. There was a period of time, a year or so, when Haley never heard anything from Anthony. And then, all of a sudden, he got in touch with her to ask for a DNA test to prove that Nakota was his. A couple of years later, he was granted visitation. It seems that almost immediately he began abusing Nakota. I suspect that he wanted that DNA test done to help with his immigration status, because you know it's always better to, or maybe he needed to prove that he actually has ties to America, and so he needed that DNA to say that Nakota was his son. I assume. I didn't really check immigration requirements, but you know, it kind of makes sense. In 2017, Nakota was kicked in the shin for spilling a glass of milk. His head also was allegedly pushed into a plate of spinach after he wouldn't eat the greens. When Haley complained about the attack over spinach in 2017, DCS performed a home inspection. The department noted that Anthony had no substantiated history, no criminal history, no diagnosis, no domestic violence, no drug or alcohol use. In March 2018, her son was pulled down a flight of steps. All of these incidents were flagged to DCS before Nakota's death. Nakota Kelly really didn't deserve this. He didn't have an easy life to begin with. He was having difficulties breathing when he slept. In 2014, he had surgery. He was also diagnosed with severe ADHD, sensory processing disorder, pervasive developmental disorder, a mild learning disability related to autism, and speech impediment. At one point, he was on medication for his conditions. Now, we've seen it so many times. Children with mood behavior or learning difficulties are at much higher risk of parental abuse. They can be harder to deal with. But this is not an excuse to kill your own flesh and blood. Haley dealt with this, Anthony didn't. Then why did he want visitations? He asked for it. Anyway, Nakota ended up spending the weekend with his father, although he expressed that he didn't want to. Saturday, July the 18th, 2020, in the evening, Anthony's cousin from Texas called 911 saying that he received a text message and a phone call from Anthony DiBia. They hadn't spoken in more than 20 years until they reconnected a month earlier. Anthony was crying on the phone and repeated over and over again, "I just killed my son." At the same time, Anthony asked for his cousin's address, but when the cousin refused, Anthony got quite upset and his cousin hung up the phone. According to court documents, when the witness asked Anthony why he did it, Anthony replied his son's mother had given him a very hard time and cost him a lot of money in court. So, was it all over money? Nakota, his 10-year-old boy, dies over money? His dad kills him over some court fees, money? I mean, it's just wrong. Just after 10 p.m. on Saturday night, Indianapolis police goes to Anthony's house at Ashton Point Apartments, 6007 West Lake South Drive, for a welfare check. They see the Jeep Patriot car parked. They knock on the door of apartment E. No one answers the door, but they hear voices, some kind of noise, so they leave without even forcing entry. I mean, I have a question here. Is that how they perform welfare checks? By just, leaving? Aren't they supposed to actually see the child that they came to check? Because this proved to be a big mistake. Actually, it was a fatal mistake. Because on Sunday morning, July the 19th, police received yet another report, this time from Anthony's friend. He called his friend in the same morning to ask for a suitcase, to which the friend agreed. The friend then tells police that Anthony told him that he used a bag to suffocate his son until he stopped breathing, according to Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Detective Jonathan Schultz in a probable cause affidavit filed in Marion Superior Court. The document continued. Anthony told a friend he then took his son to the bathroom to make sure he was dead, and he has now dumped the body. Now I have glitter everywhere. According to the affidavit, several unidentified Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department officers went to Anthony's apartment at 10:11 p.m. on July 18 to check that Nakota was okay. Police knocked, but no one answered, and so they didn't go inside. Steve DeBoer, the retired Indianapolis police officer and the retired criminal justice professor, actually said that this is not the way he would have done it. The officers could have forced their way into the apartment, especially because they were told a child's life was in danger. They were told by a witness that a child was being hurt or killed in the apartment, so they had exigent circumstances. According to the law, the police can force entry to prevent injury, stop the destruction of evidence, prevent an escape, or during the hot pursuit of a fleeing suspect. They could have called a homicide detective and asked for advice, or they could have guarded the apartment to make sure that no one leaves while they ask a judge for a search warrant. There were alternatives here. Lieutenant Shane Foley, a spokesman for IMPD, said that the supervisor told the officers on the scene that they didn't have probable cause to enter the home and they were told to leave. That supervisor apparently has since retired. The spokesman refused to release the names of any of the officers involved, and they were not named in the court records either. Court records also don't mention if Nakota was still alive when the officers left without going inside. The records show that Anthony stayed busy long after midnight on July 19th. Surveillance cameras captured his white Jeep leaving and returning to the apartment complex several times between 2:27 a.m. and 7:44 a.m. At 8:30 a.m., video footage showed Anthony going in and out of his apartment 3 times, loading something into the back of his Jeep. On the second trip, he was throwing something into the apartment's trash bin. Later that morning, I think I said it already, but for the sake of the timeline, Anthony called a friend to borrow the suitcase, and again he admitted that he killed his son. At 11:43 a.m. on July 19th, 2020, this friend actually called the police. When police arrived at the address a second time at around 11:45 a.m., Anthony's vehicle was no longer parked in the parking lot. This time, after a second report, police deemed the situation serious enough to gain access to the apartment, which they did after they got the key from the management. So now, when Anthony's car is no longer there, when it's clear that there is no one there, now they enter the apartment. Yeah, just goes to show how it works, right? Inside, there was no Anthony and there was no Nakota. But what they found was a scene straight out of a horror movie. They effectively stepped into a crime scene, and a gruesome one at that. There was a small amount of blood at the entrance, but worse, in the bathroom, police found blood splattered on the walls, floor and ceiling, and brain matter on the bathroom floor. So if Anthony suffocated his son with a bag over his head until he stopped breathing, like he said, then I'm wondering why this much blood. Did he also smash his head? Why? I mean, why would you do that to your own son? He stopped breathing, for God's sake, he stopped breathing. Why do you have to do this? Why couldn't you just stop? Based on the evidence found inside this apartment, authorities did not believe that Nakota was alive at that point. Homicide detectives, child abuse detectives, the forensic team, and Marion County coroner were also brought to the scene. Investigators got hold of video footage showing Anthony making a few trips from the apartment to his vehicle, placing items in the back of his vehicle with each trip. Haley first learned that Nakota might be in danger when she got a text message from Anthony at 2:01 p.m. on July 19th saying, "Sometimes I hear voices. My son is in heaven." She texted back, "What?" She had no idea that the police had already been at Anthony's apartment that morning. She didn't know yet about the blood or the hair or the brain matter. She thought that Anthony, was just messing about with her. But when Anthony didn't reply to her text message, she got this feeling in her stomach and she got really scared. She freaked out, so she called some people that she trusted, who then called the police. She also contacted the DCS caseworker again, telling the worker about the messages. After doing what he did to his son, Anthony actually tried to get away. Detectives meanwhile were tracking his phone as he drove through Indiana, Illinois and into Missouri. At 4 p.m., a Missouri State Highway Patrol officer stopped Anthony's Jeep in Macon County near Highway 38, around 375 miles west of his Indianapolis apartment. There were bloodstains in the back of his Jeep, but there was no sign of Nakota. Anthony didn't talk to the police. A detective traveled to Missouri to follow up, but Anthony refused to give a statement. I wonder if, maybe at this point Anthony already asked advice from a lawyer, hence he refused to give the statement. Anthony DiBia was arrested and charged with murder in the presumed death of his 10-year-old son, Nakota Blake Kelly. He was transported to Macon County Jail. Marion County prosecutor said that a conviction would result in life without parole or even the death penalty. Now, how much do you want to bet that Anthony will try to plead insanity? I think that he's, trying to set up the insanity defense. Although I'm not so sure how it would work out. He was lucid enough to call and ask for a suitcase and to admit to his cousin that he killed Nakota. On the other hand though, he might just plead insanity on the basis that from so much stress, from going bankrupt, wasting money on lawyers and legal fees, so many years of court with Haley, he could just say that he just didn't, think clearly anymore. He can also very well say that he has no recollection of what happened. Anthony's rage actually grew overnight after Nakota arrived to his place, and he just exploded the next evening on July 18. Haley, Nakota's mom, thinks often about her last conversation with her son. The call happened on July 18 at 7:36 p.m. Nakota told her that he ate Lunchables and he was watching some YouTube videos on his phone. They said "I love you" to each other and they hung up. And Haley just expected Nakota to be home at 9:30 p.m. on Sunday, July 19. When she spoke to him, he seemed fine. It was just a typical call on a typical weekend visit with his dad. There was no sign of the kind of rage that would drive a father to do the unthinkable. Around 2 hours after that phone call with his mom, Anthony made a frantic phone call to a relative in Texas, screaming repeatedly into the phone, "I killed my son." When the relative asked him why, he said because Haley had given him a hard time, costing him a lot of money. So obviously that the relative, called the police, which I assume we are talking about the cousin. Investigators were searching for Nakota's remains. Anthony's phone pinged near Eagle Creek around the 4,500 block of West Vermont Avenue. Police searched the area, searching heavily wooded areas near Eagle Creek with the assistance of canines whilst a helicopter passed repeatedly overhead. Prosecutors say that Anthony got rid of Nakota's body somewhere along the 375-mile trip that he took trying to escape. Anthony remains in the Marion County Jail awaiting trial for murder. Haley said that she wants the prosecutor to seek the death penalty. Prosecutors declined to say if they are considering filing death penalty charges. Haley just wants justice. She wants to have a funeral for Nakota. She actually, wants a grave that she can visit. She believes that Anthony was angry, so angry that he killed their son. Quote, I think he planned it. I don't think that it just came over him. I think he found out that I was sticking out for myself and he couldn't hurt me no more. And so that he took the only thing that mattered to me. One of the things that mattered most to me. End of quote. The latest in the trial, or anything related to court I could find, is actually from 2022. Anthony, or perhaps his legal team I should say, asked a judge to throw out evidence linking him to Nakota's death that was found when officers searched his apartment without a warrant. During a hearing in April 2022 in Marion Superior Court, defense attorney Brian K. Lamar asked magistrate James Kevin Snyder to suppress evidence found in Anthony's apartment, including hair, blood smears, and brain matter. The attorney said that the officer should have obtained a search warrant before entering the home. Deputy prosecutor Michelle Sharp argued that exigent circumstances gave officers the legal authority to enter the apartment and check on Nakota's welfare. Prosecutors argued that the law allows police to enter private property when they have reason to believe a person's life might be in danger. In this case, officers got the keys to the apartment after two witnesses told police that Anthony called them and confessed to killing his son. Retired IMPD officer Dennis Knight testified that he was among the first to enter Anthony's unit that day. He said that he got a master key from the apartment office. He opened the door and entered the studio apartment. He was thinking there was a possibility that there would be a dead child in there or an injured child that they needed to check on. He and two other police officers entered, announced themselves, and checked all the areas where a person might be hiding. They opened a door to the bathroom and they found a blood smear and brain matter on the floor. They backed out of the apartment, guarded the entrance, and called for homicide detectives. Although Anthony was arrested in Missouri on July 19, 2020, officers have still not found Nakota's body. Now, I'm not sure what happened, if they suppressed the evidence or not. I couldn't really, find details. But I'm hoping that the judge didn't agree, because if that's the case, then I don't see how Anthony could be charged with murder. From what we publicly know, the blood and brain matter were almost the only evidence to suggest that something happened there, and if that's gone, then the prosecution has no case. If you do have, any more info about this, if, the judge accepted to suppress the evidence, please, would you just let me know in the comment section down below, because honestly, I tried finding out, but I couldn't find any information, any updates around this. It was in April 2022 that Haley Kelly sued the Indiana Department of Child Services for its failure to protect Nakota, despite repeated claims that he had been abused or neglected by his father. Haley told DCS about that weekend and the messages and what her son previously told her, but according to her lawsuit, they did nothing to protect Nakota. This was the last in a series of abuse and neglect complaints against Anthony. Documents that Haley provided to WR-TV show that DCS investigated at least 4 allegations of abuse and neglect by Anthony against Nakota during weekend visits between 2016 and 2018. Haley asked the Wabash Circuit Court and DCS caseworkers to protect her son from his father. Those records show that she asked the judge to require that Anthony's visits with Nakota be supervised. The abuse and neglect complaints were unsubstantiated, and the judge never required supervised visits. Haley's attorney Robert B. Turner said, quote, "I think more could have been done. I guess the thing that gets me is what's a kid supposed to do other than saying, he's gonna kill me, he's gonna kill me. And guess what? He killed him." End of quote. Haley's lawsuit says that Anthony told DCS he didn't put his hands on Nakota. He claimed he would verbally discipline him, and that this is all about the mother not getting her way in terms of visitation and child support. Haley's lawsuit names DCS and Anthony DiBia as defendants. She said she hopes the suit forces DCS to admit it made mistakes. Life without Nakota has been difficult for her. It's hard to mourn, she said, when there is no grave to visit, and she just tries to go day by day just to get through the day. Some days she finds it hard to get out of bed and do anything really. And now I really think it's time for us all to remember Nakota. Nakota Blake Kelly was born on May 25th, 2010 at 7 pounds 10 ounces. Nakota was a happy, playful little boy with an utterly charming smile, gorgeous brown eyes, curly black hair and glasses. He played baseball for the Wabash Little League, but he loved other sports as well, like bowling, football and wrestling. He loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for most of his life. He and his older sister bickered like most siblings do, but they adored each other and enjoyed playing and spending time with each other. Nakota was, according to his mom, a mama's boy. Whenever Haley was sick, he refused to leave her side. Of course, being a 10-year-old boy, he also loved video games. One friend from church remembered about Nakota. He had a smile you cannot forget. He was always dressed like a little gentleman. He was ornery and kept me on my toes. I loved his spunky yet sometimes bashful personality. I'm heartbroken. I'm so thankful we know who holds this precious boy now until he can be reunited with those who loved him dearly. And honestly, I have no idea what happened with Anthony's trial. I couldn't find anything recently about this, any updates. It could be that it was delayed because of the COVID lockdown, as this happened in 2020, and maybe he wasn't sentenced yet. But I am hoping that he will get to spend his whole life in prison. So my question to you is, as the title of this video says, did Anthony kill his son Nakota to get back at his ex for revenge, to hurt her, or did he do it for money? Because he lost so much with the court battle. Or perhaps was it, a bit of both? Maybe he kind of resented Nakota for him wasting so much money trying to get visitation rights, and he was also angry at Haley for making him lose so much money and wanted to hit her where it hurts most. What do you think? I personally believe that, maybe it was a bit of both really. But anyway, I'm looking forward to reading your comments, and so please do let me know what do you think in the comments below, of course. For now, take care, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!